I would not be where I am today had I not had the field experience. And had I had more field experience, I think that I would only be a stronger, more competent professional.
Welcome to the Ground Investigation Podcast, a show featuring interviews and insights from leaders in the geotechnical and geo-environmental business world. Join host Michael Taylor as he discusses the ups and downs of running a business in the GI industry, getting geological experts to share their learnings and lessons, as well as their plans for the future, highlighting what they think will improve the ground investigation industry moving forward. Now, here is your host, Michael Taylor.
Today we're joined by Daniel Vieira, a rock-obsessed engineering geologist who spent over 10 years tackling landslides, rockfalls and anything else that dares to mess with stable ground. By day, he's a geohazard mitigation expert, crafting solutions to keep us all safe from Mother Nature's tantrums. By night, he's a devoted dad, outdoor enthusiast and self-proclaimed geology nerd. Whether he's stabilizing slopes or talking shop with his rock nerd friends, Daniel's passion is protecting people and improving infrastructure as solid as a bedrock. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
What initially sparked your interest in engineering geology and geohazard mitigation?
Sure. So as a kid, I was a geologist before I even knew what a geologist was. I have to say, I was always fascinated with earth processes and geologic hazards, landslides, avalanches, rock falls. I grew up in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. And so a lot of river canyons, a lot of hillside terrain, and then a rich mining history. So with that, I've, always had exposure to geologic principles and the outdoors with rich geologic exposure there. And then in my young adult years, I did some traveling, some backpacking in New Zealand, and got to witness some of these earth processes in action, volcanoes, earthquakes, avalanches, erosion from rivers and hillsides. And that's really where I began to realize that my passion was in that. My interest was there, and started to explore what type of careers I could have doing that. And so that's essentially how I picked my career, and I knew what I wanted to do.
It is often inspired by the kind of landscape, depending on where you live. You can live in some amazing places and you have some nice, fresh kind of rock exposures, whether it's in California, whether it's in Scotland or England or wherever it is. It can often inspire that and kind of fossil collection or whatever you find on the beach, essentially. So you've worked on a variety of projects across California. How has your experience shaped your approach to managing complex geohazard issues?
Sure. So I would say, beginning with my geology education at university, the school I went to was really had a high emphasis on field mapping and becoming aware of your study area. And so, from the beginning, I got a lot of boots on the ground, looking at outcrops and orienting myself geospatially with the terrain and understanding mapping techniques. And so when I started early in my career, there was also some intensive field operation duties that I was put into that made me become more aware and orienting myself around a site. This was as a field technician for a geotechnical engineering firm. That's where I started my career. And then from there, just being around these construction sites from a geotechnical engineering perspective and understanding construction sequencing and logistics, and just witnessing and evaluating the field mitigation systems and learning from, the flaws in design and construction, just kind of developed the way that I approach projects now today.
Okay. And then can you share your transition from consulting at NV5 to your current role at Geostabilization International? What inspired the change?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I started my career in geotech right out of university, worked for a small firm in the North Bay area along the north coast of California, and then relocated back to my hometown in the Sierra foothills in Northern California, working for NV5. First, it was the legacy firm that the NV5 corporation purchased. So I experienced the corporate transition from a small independent geotech firm to a corporate firm. And then through working there, I moved my way through that career progression and advanced into more of a managerial position, partially because of vacancies in management above me, and just timing and opportunity. But I kind of found myself in a interim position of operations manager for a geotech office, and was no longer doing the field work and was less involved with project work, and kind of found that I was no longer getting that fulfillment or spark in the work that I was doing. And so when I realized that, I decided that, I wanted to change. I gave my notice to my company and told them I was going to start exploring options because I wanted to change. And they were pretty receptive to that. I considered going solo and starting my own independent geologic consulting firm. But as I explored, starting a business, I discovered many of the complexities involved and the challenges there. And at that same time, a colleague with personal and professional connections that I've known recommended the current role I have with GSI. And I was intrigued by the opportunity. I knew about GSI and knew some of the people that work there and the exciting work that they do. So I started the interview process, and they're a great company and the role sounded very interesting. So I decided to give it a try. And it's been a great move for me. And I would say it's definitely recharged that spark in my career that I needed.
Sure. Okay. So what's been your most rewarding project that you've worked on, and why does it stand out?
Right. So there's been so many over the past, 10 years or so that I've been working, but I guess I probably would pick the most rewarding project from last year, from 2024, and that was the Crescent City coastal landslide repair. This was a landslide along a bluff in Northern California. It was historic or dormant landslide deposit that was reactivated from wave scour at the toe of the slope and winter saturation surcharge, and it resulted in a partial loss of the roadway and shoulder during the winter too. So we got called in to look at the project and come up with a repair solution. It was a complex design. We had to stabilize the headscarp, restore loss of the roadway and shoulder, protect the toe wall of the wall from wave scour, and we needed a solution that had a natural aesthetic finish because of the coastal regulatory agencies. So we came up with a soil nail micropile supported sculpted shotcrete wall that ultimately was like 205 feet long and up to 35 feet tall. And so one of the biggest systems that I've been involved with so far. And the challenges on that project included, unstable slope, difficult access, dealing with king tides, which is, a winter high tide with high surf events that we get on the North Coast here. Heavy coastal winds up to 40 miles per hour sometimes, and that was pretty regular. Each week we would be getting that. Our crew would be on man lifts and working on the wall, and these gusts of wind would come through. And there was even 2 months ago an atmospheric river and a bomb cyclone storm that came through. These new meteorological phrases that are being coined for our weather events, but this event brought over 17 inches of rain in 3 days when we were only halfway through the project. And then the equipment challenges that come up. Every project runs into a few of them. Then navigating the regulatory agencies and in a tight project timeline expectation. I think that definitely was the most rewarding project to finish that project successfully before the end of the year with the complexities and the challenges that we experienced there.
Sure. Your project write-ups highlight intricate slope stabilization methods, such as those used on Alpine Road. What's the biggest challenge when implementing these solutions?
Yeah, so I would say it's the operational and logistical challenges for building the solution. And, we specialize in limited access projects, but we try to prioritize time and efficiency to bring the best value to our clients, and then, of course, always staying safe.
So you prioritize time and efficiency. Can you give us a few kind of hints, tips, and that sort of thing, perhaps someone are looking to increase the time efficiency on their projects to give their clients a better value? I was wondering if you could give us just a little bit of advice.
Sure. So, well, it's always learning, identifying and recognizing the lessons learned from previous projects and then leveraging your resources. I come from a consulting background and have only been an engineering contractor for almost 2 years now. But the people I work with have been doing this for decades. So I defer to their experience and their recommendations when it comes with operations or estimating or project engineers that have been working on systems like these, particularly emergency response situations. And so it's developing a team and of trust and winning together. I think that's key.
Sure. So you mentioned kind of consultancy and contracting, which I kind of discussed this in a little bit of detail with my last guest, Hannah. What's your kind of pros and cons for each side? They're quite different animals, aren't they? Whether it's a consultancy or geotechnical or geoenvironmental contractors.
Sure. So coming from the geotech side, a lot of that involves identifying and diagnosing the problem and then characterizing the site, coming up with recommendations and essentially, solving the problem. But from an engineering contractor side, you then have to fix the problem. And I've seen designs as a consultant and then put them in the field where a contractor just can't logistically pull it off. There's access that has to be considered, there's safety, there's regulation oversight, which sometimes prohibits certain methods or techniques from being implemented. And so from the engineering contractor side, you really have to consider how you can build something, or how you can fix it. Then when you combine the two with the firm that I work at, where we have in-house geotechnical engineers that put together optimized design solutions that are tailored to solve and fix the problem efficiently and cost effectively, then I think that there's real value that you can provide to a project and to a client, just because it's all the goal is the overarching goal is mutual, and that's a successful project. So that's where I've seen the differences and similarities between the two.
Okay, geosynthetically confined soil systems seem to be a key tool in your projects. Could you explain how they work and why they're so effective?
Sure. A GCS systems is essentially our version of an MSE wall. There's differences in the way we design and construct them from other systems, but it's essentially the mechanically stabilized earth concept with internal reinforcement with geogrids, some type of a wall facing, whether it be modular block or welded wire facing. There's newer systems that are vegetated wall faces. They're typically battered, but our GCS system is just our version of an MSE wall. We also add back stabilization because it's typically a landslide scarp. So we'll do some soil nailing into the back scarp and micropile stabilization at the toe of the wall to support the wall and provide some stabilization again through the slide plane. Those are little differences in our GCS compared to other MSE wall systems.
How do you prioritize safety for your crews and the public whilst working on high-risk geohazard sites?
Well, all tasks lead with a safety evaluation. We do daily safety meetings, and we have dedicated safety officers for projects and in supervising our crews. And we strictly follow industry safety standards. My company's safety records are among some of the best in the industry. Every company preaches safety as a priority, but bringing everyone home safely, at the end of each day and at the end of a project is absolute.
Yeah, it's paramount, isn't it? But lots of companies shout about health and safety, but then in reality, on site, slightly different. But I suppose they have to shout about it really, because it's an expected, isn't it? It's not a good to have; it's a must have. And those who do not practice proper health and safety practices generally come unstuck at some point further down the line.
Yeah, 100%.
Soil nails, shotcrete, and micropiles feature prominently in your work. How do you decide which techniques to apply to a specific problem?
When working on slope stabilization projects, with limited access, small diameter drilling is more productive and cost effective. And, so this kind of leads to the soil nail micropile systems that we utilize. Equipment access will often dictate what systems can be installed. And so we're always asking, that I'm always asking the experts, from our operations team. They get the final say on how and if we can build a solution and what productions we can expect. And then we tailor every project with an optimized design solution, based on those details.
Sure. Can you discuss the innovative approaches used for the San Antonio Valley Road? And could you just give us a bit of a description about the project for the audience as well?
San Antonio Valley Road is a rural area just east of the South Bay Area, and it was impacted by some of those mega fires, those massive wildfires. And so, about 3 to 4 years after, post fire, the area was hit with successive atmospheric rivers, and so there were multiple shoulder failures that propagated into the roadway with shallow rotational landslides. So we got called in to look at up to 5 different sites, and all very similar in the failure mechanisms, slightly different in the size and limits of the hazard. But we came up with, because most of the area could be reached from the top of the road, over the shoulder, as we say, we stabilized the center mass of the slide with a soil nail stabilized backscarp and a micropile supported GCS wall. And then the edges of the slide scarp on the margins were repaired with soil nail supported shotcrete walls, and in a shoulder build out in some areas where the sections had to be restored, where the volume of the road and the shoulder was lost, that needed to be built out.
So when you get to carry out a project and something like that, where at the end of it, it's safer if the road's been closed, it's been opened, or traffic flow has managed to increase. Once it's all done, how does it make you feel?
Oh, I mean, it's great. It's great to see how an agency, in this case the Public Works Road Agency for the county, was impacted. There were remote rural communities out there that were isolated or had to travel a few more hours in the opposite direction, to get in and out. And so by restoring the roadway, we were able to let the traveling public get access back into those areas. And that's the fulfillment that I talk about in the type of work I do. I want it to be meaningful, and so, and then the county's happy too that they've repaired a hazard that they weren't prepared for. They were impacted by these mega fires, this massive wildfire that came through the area. And the first 2 years after that, they had debris flows and lost structures that had to be restored, the public and the private community. But then what wasn't anticipated was that 3, 4 years down the line, they could be impacted by these shallow landslides that start happening. And we're starting to see a pattern of that in Northern California, especially where I work, where, the 3 to 4 years after a big wildfire will come through, you start getting these shallow to mid depth landslides that start impacting slopes and particularly roadways. I think it's attributed to the loss of vegetation. Dead trees and shrubs, after a couple of years, tend to fall over. The root systems, lose contraction into the soil, and it becomes a conduit for water to get in. We all know as geotechs, like, all water needs is time and gravity, and it will always win. And so it's interesting to see 3, 4 years after these big wildfires, the landslide impacts that are starting to happen.
Sure, and that's kind of, you're seeing that on a regular basis. Are you? Once one happens, then a few years later, it kind of triggers these shallow landslides, which you said.
Yes, and it would be an interesting case study to explore that.
So what role does technology play in your work, particularly in the geophysical investigations and slope stability analysis?
Sure. So I used to perform geophysical investigations as a geotechnical engineer, particularly, seismic refraction and microtremor, REMIs for for site characterization and for bedrock densities, a little bit of ground penetrating radar, more hiring geophysical subcontractors, and then, managing the data acquisition and analysis of that. But now I would say I utilize, laser rangefinders for collecting site measurements in the field. I'm a UAV commercial drone pilot, so I do drone flights for reconnaissance mapping and surface modeling of my sites. But I still carry my Brunton compass and rock hammer and a hand lens and do bedrock characterization and descriptions. So it's important to still have, the analog skills that traditional geologists are taught. And then we also leverage and utilize existing geotech lab data and subsurface slope modeling for slope stability analysis. We use the Rock Science suite of programs, but there's other good programs out there as well, such as Geo5 has another good suite of programs. So those are all good ones.
With over a decade of experience, how have you seen geotechnical solutions evolve, and what excites you about the future?
Yeah, so the material manufacturing industry is always improving and pushing innovation to gain, an upper edge in their industry. And as geotechnical engineers and engineering contractors, we should be aware of these new and improved materials and systems and see how we can implement them into our repairs for, again, an optimized, performance or solution. So really knowing your suppliers and what they carry and being aware of new materials or new systems is going to, help you provide the best value to a design or a solution to your project and for your client. And looking at geotextile industry and the many applications that are in use now, it's pretty incredible. It seems like they're always coming up with new ways to use a geotextile, whether it be a woven, a non-woven, a monofilament, or a natural fiber, mat. There's just so many different combinations and suppliers that I think it's great for our industry to have these options. And to as we get through the decades of these materials being in use, then we start to better understand the service life expectations of them. Particularly, I'd say in the last 5 years, especially, there's been a big push or innovation for these green environmental systems, becoming more popular, more applicable, with green facing walls and slopes and different facing options like that. Some really cool products that I've seen lately and have utilized a couple in my systems include like concrete canvas, flex MSE. I've even seen a concrete moss that can be applied. I haven't seen it in person, but it's something that I've seen out on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has a lot of cool ideas out there, innovative ideas, but it's just exciting to see what's going to come next and to see who's using it and who's sharing, the successes of these systems.
Do you think that's done enough in the industry? Do you think enough companies and people share kind of, I suppose, lessons learned and new technologies? Or do you think there's a commercial reason at the start of something to keep it kind of a bit closer to your chest and under wraps?
Well, it's all about how broad your network is, how broad the web is that you're communicating with in your professional network. Knowing material suppliers and some of the manufacturers, they more proactively promote themselves to you, but staying engaged with them and challenging them to not just show you a product, but give me a case study, show me where this has worked before, and then talking with other geo professionals, geotechnical and civil engineers that are kind of pushing the boundary on using these materials, and then the feedback from the engineering contractors on how it performed. And like it may be conceptually a benefit there, but there's some flaws in the application or the installation that if it's giving you a cost savings in material, but it's taking twice as long to install, well, the cost of construction will offset that cost savings in material, and just kind of understanding the full connection of how it impacts our industry.
Finding the right staff is hard, really hard. At GI-REC Limited, we understand the ground investigation market inside out and can make all the difference to your recruitment woes. You need to concentrate on running the business, which is very difficult to do without the correct number of qualified staff. We can help you get your time back and lower your stress levels. We only work with talented, referenced, and often entirely exclusive candidates across the ground engineering sector. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not a dream, it's a reality for many of our happy customers. Get in touch with the team now to book a call. Just email info@girec.co.uk to book a call, or click the link in the show notes now.
What's been your approach to mentoring younger geologists and fostering a collaborative work environment?
I've had the pleasure of training other young geologists and young engineers that have worked with me and my team. And I found that through my learning processes that it's best to lead by example, demonstrate the skills and practice that and then sharing your observations and thoughts and interpretations so they can learn how to think like a professional, and then giving back to the community by sharing your time to help the profession stay alive, And I don't stop learning either. I'm always asking questions. I find mentors and people with the experience to learn from before they retire, before that knowledge is lost, because there's so much good talent out there in our industry. So trying to stay engaged, above and below you in experience, because it's all about how strong your team is. And I would also say, when I collaborate with the team, understanding what success means to each person, for their own individual role, and then figuring out how we can all succeed together. And then it's super critical to always be respectful when communicating with people.
So how would you say some particularly good teamwork sort of led to the success of a particularly challenging project?
Well, since it's so fresh in my mind, again, I would think about the Crescent City coastal landslide repair that we just completed. It's the location of this site is only about 15 minutes from the Oregon border, which is another territory for the project development engineer role that I have. There's another person in Oregon, and he happens to have over 15 years experience in that role. And so he knew the general contractor and the geotech consultants that were up there. He's the one that got the lead for that call for that work. And so he and I actually shared that pursuit, which gave me a great opportunity to learn firsthand from him, how to shepherd a large, complicated project from, its inception all the way through completion. But beyond just him, we utilized multiple engineers and estimators for developing a design build solution on that job. And then our operations team, our senior superintendents, gave a lot of input on the logistics and constructability. And outside of my company, we worked closely with the team of geotech and civil and environmental consultants to navigate the regulatory agencies and the permitting nuances of that site.
Okay, and then climate change is increasing geohazard risks. How do you see the geotechnical industry adapting to these challenges over time?
I would say learning from your past project successes and failures, and then adapting to become more responsive and productive to expedite an emergency mitigation work. Case studies are great examples to share with the community, particularly Hurricane Helene back in North Carolina. Most recently, our company was very proactive in getting in at the beginning, right after the hurricane, and have multiple crews working right now, stabilizing sites out there. So proactive preparations, and then developing partnerships to kind of leverage those resources quickly when they're needed. From the geotech side, I would say it's getting the site investigations completed as soon as possible so that we can push into design and construction before the hazard propagates and becomes bigger, making it more complicated and timely and a higher cost for repair. And then, I think with climate change and adapting to these challenges, there's these new environmental friendly or green solutions that can be implemented too. like turf reinforced mats and vegetated wall facing and vegetated slopes. We're seeing a lot more of those systems.
How do you approach value engineering to deliver cost-effective yet durable solutions?
Value engineering solutions involve identifying a stabilization design that optimizes the client's priorities and provides a safe and sustainable system. Okay, so you must consider multiple design solutions and then valid design solutions, and then identify the right system through logistical constructability review and cost analysis. So you have to consider what equipment and techniques can be utilized to specifically improve the overall performance of the project to become a success. And then leverage your resources and listen to the experts on your team, the engineers, the estimators, and the operations team. So to me, that's really how you deliver a value engineered solution.
Okay, then of course, in a geotechnical ground engineering world, there can be a lot of hours that has to be done. So in relation to yourself and family life, how do you manage to stay sort of grounded and able to fit it all in, I suppose?
I mean, that's the challenge. Yeah, time management is the key. I try to practice detaching from my work and really being in the moment, living in the moment when I'm with my family. I started my family before I started my career. And so that's always been part of the balance of building a career, but also, maintaining a happy and healthy family. And I say practice because it really does take practice. There's no finish line to, achieving a healthy life work balance. You're constantly practicing it. I'm lucky enough that I have a hybrid remote role, so I can be flexible with my work and finding time with my family. And then I try to get out of the office often. Like, my office is in my house. So, maybe it's just run to the kitchen for a snack or get out, outdoor relief, walk my property, or if I have enough time, go hike or go fish with my family, go to one of my kids' soccer practices. That's what I like to do. Get a break to go take a breath. You know what I'm saying? And then when I'm on the road, it can be tough. I do travel about a third or more of my time. And so, that can be hard, but it's usually not more than a few days and I'm gone. And then when I make sure that when I come home, I make time to reconnect with my family.
For me, I have to do one thing, which is turn off my phone. As soon as I turn off my phone, I am there. But when it's in my pocket and it vibrates, and it's either some client or candidate or someone in between, and then I just cannot help but to check my phone
Yeah.
obsessively until the point where I can actually turn it off. Right, no one can contact me now. Excellent. And it's amazing how quickly you can just forget about it. But when you're waiting for emails and all the rest of it, it can be a bit of a pain.
Definitely. My wife's really big about that. And I should also finish by saying, huge credit to my wife. She's a massive support for my career and for my family. And she carries a lot of the workload when I'm gone. So she's a big supporter for me.
So if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self at the start of your career?
I would just say ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that the experience through my career and opportunities I've had have been because of the people that I've surrounded myself with. And getting as much information as I can out of them and the situation is really how you grow and develop your career. And so if I could go back, I would tell myself to take the opportunity to experience, new tasks, utilize your resources of the people you're around and stay in the field as long as you can.
Do you think people want to come in from the field too early, as in kind of people with a couple of years experience or less say, right, that's it. I would like to be 100% office bound now. I don't really want to be going out on site. Do you find that a lot?
I've seen that with some young professionals, and I would just say that my career track, I would not be where I am today had I not had the field experience. And had I had more field experience, I think that I would only be a stronger, more competent professional. And so if a young professional out there is listening to this and thinks that field experience is a stepping stone that they just have to brush over, that I would just highly emphasize that's not the case. Hands-on experience in the field is really what kind of galvanizes and seasons your professional career, so that when you eventually hopefully become a manager that has that supervises other professionals, you can speak from experience. And it really shouldn't be something that someone should be trying to fast track their way through. And maybe if they think that office work is the career they want without any type of field experience, I don't think that that's going to serve them very well in the geotechnical industry.
No, I would agree with that for the most of the industry, I would say. Okay, what's been your funniest and most expected thing to happen whilst working on a project?
There's been some funny things in my career. Um, I think again, being in the field, there's always unexpected things that happen. Looking far back in my career, when I was a rookie geologist doing primarily field work, field investigations, I remember I was on a drilling job, drilling in bay muds. And anyone who's ever drilled in bay muds knows that it's messy work, and it's not particularly exciting as far as geologic conditions you're logging and sampling, but it's necessary. And so there was a mechanical breakdown on a rig while we were, almost a full day into drilling on bay muds, and there was this one driller's helper who was just a clown, right? He was always saying silly things and just being real funny around the rig. He was still being safe. He wasn't neglecting safety, but he definitely turned the mood of the crew and the atmosphere we were around, which in other situations I'd been in is kind of where you're reaching your limit of patience. But this guy was just raising the atmosphere and the mood just by being positive. And I still remember that specifically because it changed my perspective on how letting work affect you and your attitude and staying positive.
Sure. So finally, what motivates you to take on such demanding work, and what are your aspirations for the future?
I would say that I'm motivated for challenges. Challenges are really what drive me, and that's the type of work that I crave. I like to be challenged. I like to work my way through a challenge. I like the feeling of accomplishing a task that required my full attention and complex solving complex problems. And then of course my passion is geology and geohazard related. So the complex geohazards are the types of problems that I want to continue to go after and tackle. What motivates me the most about my role is just being the first responder to a geohazard, being one of the first boots on the ground to look at a geohazard, a landslide or a rockfall event, and characterize the site and look and then work with the team to develop a solution for it. And so that's really where I get my drive and my interest and passion for the work. And then my aspirations for the future at this point are just to continue in the role that I'm in. I'm, thoroughly happy and satisfied with my role right now as a project development geologist. Every job I work on is exciting. It's a new exciting project, but they're all geohazard related. And I work with a very strong, talented team of professionals. So I'd say just pretty happy where I am right now. Mother Nature will bring the work. I trust that.
Right. Daniel, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, is there anything else that you would like to add before we end?
No, just thank you to you, Michael. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you for your contribution to our community with your podcast and getting our community engaged and talking about these interesting topics, and for sharing who you meet with and what they have to say to our community. I think that it's a great service that you're providing here, and I appreciate being part of it.
Thanks very much. It means a lot because it takes some time, but the guests have a lot of things to say, and the variety is quite good. And now we're kind of some in UK, America, Australia. I'm sure we'll think of somewhere else to interview someone for. But yeah, thanks for your kind words. But yeah, thanks very much for joining and answering the questions for the audience.
All right. Well, thank you much yourself. Happy New Year, Michael, and take care. Keep it up.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ground Investigation Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please support the show by leaving it a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. For more information on what was discussed in this episode, click the link in the show notes now.